Hi, and welcome to a Conquest Corner. So, on this particular episode, as well as some of the other ones you're going to see today, you're going to see me probably dressed very much the same because today is Monday the 12th, and they just released the updates for the current edition of the game. So, they updated the factions, core rules, all of that, and I want to go through and discuss some of these. In particular, I'd like to go through a little bit of each army, at least as time permits, to be able to do all of that. And with that, I want to discuss the changes, what I see of them as, just initial thoughts. I'll be honest, I haven't looked through these much before. I perused the Old Dominion one, which is going to be this video first. But otherwise, I also want to discuss ideas in terms of list building, how that's going to change what lists, what I think it's going to mean for the game in general, and all of that. I'm just very excited to go through this, so I thought this might be a fun thing to do. I know with this kind of stuff, you can always read on your own, but sometimes it's fun to be able to kind of listen along, get some thoughts, and maybe see what other people are thinking of it. So, what you're going to notice here in the big, if you're watching this, is the new rules. Over on the right side, I have the old. It does say old across the top because some of these we do want to be able to compare them, especially for spots where the change is a little more subtle. All right, so the first change, again, we're looking at Old Dominion right now. First change is for the Dark Power Pool Tier 2. So previously it said that, hey, at Tier 2, you get your memories of old action as a draw event instead of an action. Here it's as a draw event or an action instead of an action. Remember, Tier 3, you get to do both, so you may spend it as an action as well as your draw event. Here they're specifying the fact that at Tier 2, you can choose to use it as an action. So overall, why would that be a thing? Is it a change? Yes, it is a little bit of a change. Why you might want to do that, if there was some reason you don't want your memories of old in the beginning, but you do want the ability at some later point. I'm thinking objects like potentially, what is I'm trying to think of right now? So I paused there briefly to go back through. Phalanx was the rule I was trying to think of, though we're going to see Legionnaires don't have that anymore. So that would be a spot where I could see you wanting not to have it on because maybe you need to make, I say, 9 or 10-inch charge, so you would have rolled for it. That's not a current thing, so maybe as we go along, we'll see a spot where you could use it, but this does allow you to kind of save it for later if there was a good reason to do so. For other changes here, Blasphemous is the other one that got the big change. So Blasphemous was previously, right before today, technically. Remember, if you are in a tournament, they give you, I think it's a 2-week grace period before all these rules come into effect or so. But Blasphemous was now on your Warlord. It was no longer a piece of war gear, and it was while your Warlord was on the battlefield. That's no longer the case. So now it's each round before the supremacy phase begins, you get a 1 power token to the empowerment pool of your choice. Notice it mentions nothing about Warlord. Your Warlord goes away. None of that matters anymore. So 1, that means you can actually get essentially 10 turns of it. The other very, very good piece, and I'm very excited about this personally, in addition, you may modify all of your reserve rolls, your reinforcement rolls, I should say, values by +1. So you can add +1 to those rolls. So a roll of 4 or less becomes a roll of 5 or less. And a roll of 6 is always a failure. So you're more reliable with when you want things in. It does say, in addition, you may modify all of your reinforcement values. To me, that's a flat +1 to all of it, not individual choice per. I'll be interested to see if that is their intention or not. But the way I read that is it's every roll. It's not picking and choosing. So early on, that means if you're running a lot of lights, you can now make it 5-ups, much more likely to get those sort of things. Yeah, roll of 4 less becomes a roll of 5 less. Yeah. Or say your mediums and heavies. Now you're looking at 3s if you want them in. So we're going to be much more reliable coming in early. So the biggest complaint I always hear about Old Dominion is, from both sides, we are very slow, but late game we are tough to deal with. We are going to get in more consistently earlier with this. Not tons earlier, but there's enough. There's plenty of times when you roll that 3 and you miss something, especially for your heavies. You're going to get your mediums and heavies a little bit more reliably. That does mean your opponent now can hit you earlier, so they might like that, but it also means that your units are there earlier, so if you can get to those higher levels of memory of old, you will be stronger in general. The old one, I'm only going to scroll when it's necessary, which it's actually about to become necessary because we want to take a look at the distinctions in these characters. And the first character that we want to talk about is Zarch. Now, of course, with this, we could open up the app, but I'm just going to do it this way. I downloaded all these ones. So he went up by 10 points. So he's a little bit more expensive. He did get an extra attack. So he used to be 5 attacks. He's now 6 attacks. So he's even better. He base has flurry. So he still has Animate Vessel, of course. He still has Cleave 1, but now with Flurry on a Clash of 3, assuming 4 for charges or Inspire, because you're always inspired or anything like that, you are now consistently, before he was getting about 66%, now he's getting probably close into the 80, some percentages. And we're going to notice all the characters essentially got base Regen 1, but as a draw event, not as a Memory of Old. So that means they always get that Regen 1. They said for this edition, since they were removing the Retinues, they wanted to add some of those abilities in. Now, notice, you got 10 points. I'm fine with the extra attack, the flurry, the regen, but you're losing a lot of the other things you used to be able to do. So giving your command stands extra attacks, that was a big one. Giving yourself just tooled up extra wounds, extra attacks, extra all those sort of things. All of that kind of stuff is gone. There are still banners. We're going to see banners still exist for characters. And for available options, nothing changed for that. They didn't mark all the option changes. There is something, at least one that has an option change. So overall, he's definitely better. More attacks with flurries absolutely want for this guy. He's called as a Killiarch for a reason. Not being able to get some of the other bonuses hurt, but you will be able to kind of keep him without much more points. And that means you can kind of keep him a little bit cheaper because you're not going to stack him up the way that you used to. At least the way that I know a lot of people did. Strategos. Let's take a look at this guy. So, didn't change his points. Got the regen 1. Did get the extra attack as well. So, our fighting characters are a little bit better. Again, there was levels of the the combat retinue that did that anyway. So, they kind of just built it in. But he didn't have to pay extra. He got some interesting changes here. So, 1. From the front. The regiment with his character stand is currently attached to counts as class as light for the purpose of its reinforcement rule. So, wherever you put your Strategos, you are now coming in much earlier, potentially much earlier, or automatically turned 3, because remember, it's a 4-up auto. And with the fact that you can modify +1, you can be essentially 5-up auto. So you're pretty much getting them when you want. That's his main difference here. And they do talk about the Dark Blessings, tactical and combat, so we'll take a look at some of those Dark Blessings. We're going to see some of the changes that they have there. When we get to, my apologies, Mounter Strategos, I'm on 2 different screens, so it makes it a little bit tough to figure out the exact point to scroll to. Stayed the same points as before, gained that regen 1, gained the extra attacks for essentially the auto thing they would have had. Doesn't have the same thing. Has Mounted General. Your warband can contain more than 2 regiments of Cataphracti. Now, they didn't highlight this, and they really should have. Because when I first read that, I said, well, they were restricted. Why would you bother? Notice they're no longer restricted. The only restricted is the Praetorian Guard. They took the Cataphracti to mainstay. Now, I do like the fact that they said you can't have more than 2 regiments of it in this warband. I think that's a really good idea. But I love the fact that they've removed the tax. Previously, for the Mounted Strategos, if you want a Cataphracti, which is probably the unit one to put them in, you were taking someone else. Now, you could take Legionnaires for pretty cheap. I often took Anatheti. I do like what they did, but I like the option that I don't have to now. If I want to play around with this list a little bit more, or I want to take other units, I'm saving myself. Previously, I was saving myself 120 plus points. Now I'm going to save myself technically about 100 points on this current list. But you can skip those things if you just want Cataphracti from it. Especially, like I said, until the Centaurs are in, you kind of had to do it anyway. And previously, you could at least take that. He could go with that. Or then you could take Cataphracti or anything else. But so that is a huge change. I absolutely love that. I want to try running him. I don't know if I'd run 2 units because I don't have that many. I think technically, if I count it up, I have, counting the Hyratos, I have like 7 models otherwise. So I don't know if I'd run 2, but I like being able to save that 100 points and maybe putting that somewhere else. And maybe giving myself maybe 2 units of Varangian Guard. They're more expensive than that, but I can free up points in other spots. Or, you know, I still have the option of the Legionnaires. So I think that is a great and fun change. We're going to take a look at the Hierodeacon. Oh, sorry, too far. I'm looking at the wrong screen when I'm doing that. For the Hierodeacon, we are looking at 80 points, so no points change, no stat change, regen 1, and gets 2 new spells. So let's go take, actually in a moment we'll take a look at those spells, but you now get some more spells, which is very, very good. We're going to see that those spells, one deals with your living models, your cultists, and your assassins, and that is the Undying Devotion. What that does is when the spell goes off, when you lose a stand of that, you get a dark power point. Because normally you don't get any dark power for any of the living things. They're the only 2 living things in our army. Benediction of Black Sun, I forget what that was. I read it before, but we're going to see that shortly. Let's talk about Archimandrite real fast. For the Archimandrite, Only real change, gained Regen 1. Everything else stayed the same for the Archimandrite. No other big differences. The options it could take all stay the same. So that's nice and simple. Spells are listed as the same. We'll take a look at some differences and all of that as well. All right, gets a single treasure. Fallen Divinity changed, and these are important changes for Fallen Divinity. So let's start with the basic parts. For Fallen Divinity, now class is heavy, although the rule that you can't quite see, that this regiment counts as light for the purposes of reinforcement rules. So, and also has flank, so you can still come in turn 1 if you want. She has to be your warlord. That's always been a thing for her. Although you get the dark power pool either way. From the Blasphemous Soma, you get the extra points in, so you don't have to worry about waiting on that. Move 5 was move 4, so a little bit faster in its slowest form, which it absolutely needed. It was very, very slow. Now starting with 12 wounds instead of 10, what I will say for the Fallen Divinity, when you, and since characters are probably going to be a little bit stronger in general or certain things like that, it makes sense. For the Fallen Divinity being at 10 wounds, yes, she becomes a monster at higher tiers, but in the first one, she can still go down pretty easy. That's not that crazy. Remember, her save is evade 3, so essentially saves half of them. You could still chunk that down. The extra 2 wounds is a very nice addition, and you'll notice that she got some extra wounds throughout. So the next level, she used to be 12, she's now 14. Tier 3, she went up by 1 wound, she's at 16 now, it used to be 15. So she is a bit stronger. Otherwise, I don't believe there's any change in any of her pieces. The one thing you have to realize for them, they don't highlight removals, they only highlight additions, but I'm not seeing any other addition. Heavy, I think they just went with, because then that way she can take down 2 spots on objectives. So what I should say is, when you're doing this, if you have an objective that you're trying to destroy, then heavy units are able to take two down when they activate. She now is able to do the same thing. Makes sense. She's literally part of a god, so she should be able to do more. And they give you all the base things that you've always had. 3 Dark Blessings, she has the same exact unit she used to, and what blessing she can take is all the same. So, for character upgrades, they do have banners. Remember, banners there used to be other ways you could take those. They used to be related. Not actually, I shouldn't say other ways you could take those. Banners were just something you could grab. They now essentially force the banners this way, which is an important distinction. I don't know ways you would take them otherwise, or I guess it's infantry character stands, so they're essentially calling out the fact that the Master Strategos can't take them, where before he could have. So that's about the only big difference there. For the banners themselves, I don't believe any of the banners actually changed. No change to the banners, no change to weapons, no change to any of those pieces. I really hope they didn't just delete something and not show us. That would be a real big shame. For the Dark Blessings, I do not believe... Oh, sorry, we don't need that chart anymore. Yeah, because remember, all that kind of stuff is gone. For the Dark Blessings themselves, I do not believe there's any particular change to any of those. Oh, no. Tactical. One of them went away. Of course, they didn't tell us that. So, the Porphygenitis is gone. All stands of regiment that this character stands attached to gain a bodyguard special rule. So that is no longer here. When we take a look at combat, everything is the same on that page. Everything should be the same on this page as well, which it is. So there is no difference in that. No points different. Again, if they didn't highlight it in red, there's a small chance that we miss it, but otherwise we are taking a look for that. When we take a look at spells, when we look at some of these differences, 2 of the big differences, brand new spells. Benediction of Black Sun. So remember, this is a High Deacon spell. 12-inch range, 2-mint 3. Target-friendly Brute Regiment gains Blessed. So, if we think about that for a moment then. Our Brutes. Carnivores, Caritids, Bucephaly are Brutes as well, and Bone Golems. Yep, just wanted to check, make sure none of that changed. So those are our main Brutes. Remember what Bless does? Bless lets you reroll, but before dice rolls, you can either choose to reroll your attack rolls or your defense rolls. Now, you already have Carnivores with Blessed, so that's not going to help them, but all the others could absolutely utilize this. Remember, these are the units, mostly, that she can take with her. So I absolutely Just wanted to check to be sure. So Blessed, unless they change this, Blessed was only in clash or charge actions when this went off. So you weren't using this in ranged combat. So your Krtids aren't using this for their bow shots. However, I absolutely love this for Bucephaly. And this makes it an interesting choice of, do I want bone golems then? Because one of the problems when we talked about the unit was that they just got outperformed, especially because they tended to have a lower clash stat, and their bonus that they had only went off if they got ones. Well, now if I'm getting rerolls, all my ones become 2 hits, and I'm more likely to get more ones because I have these rerolls. So I do like them overall a good bit better now than I did before, especially when you get stuck in. The fact that you can't inspire, unless your tier 3 encountering is always inspired, when you're stuck in, really hurts the army. Being able to take your brutes, so your big heavy units that should be doing work for you, and letting them reroll their hits, or if you need to, rerolling saves, especially when you're taking a look at Bucephaly with an evade at 2, being able to reroll that, now you're actually going to save some things. I absolutely love that spell. For Undying Devotion, this gives a reason to take our non-undead units, because before, I only took them because they were cheap, and they were the best way to get the Hierodeacon in early. Target friendly cultist or assassin regiment till the end of the round. Each time a stand that regiment is destroyed, you get a dark power. That is huge because both of those units are very easy to take down, realistically, when you compare to other units, because they resolve. And neither of them has great defense either. So they will tend to go down pretty fast. Now you get some bonuses. So now they feel like less of a liability to keep them back. I'm hoping that the reason they gave that spell is because those are the next units that we're getting. We're not missing much, but if you're giving that change, I have a feeling that they're coming up next. For Unholy Baptism, I don't know why. Oh, because the attunement, it's no longer scaling. It used to be scaling, so you no longer have to scale, which is great since you can't buff yourself the way you used to. So I'm going to say right now, the Archimandrite, it's nowhere near as good as she used to be. The reason she is so much worse is because you can't get the auto success and the extra dice and the remove 2 from scaling. So you don't get all those bonuses. So now without scaling, at least you have a better shot to get this through. That is realistically about her only spell that cares about numbers. Although I will say, getting the, Unholy Mastery. There we go. Unholy Mastery is going to be much harder now because you don't get that auto 1 success. So we have that. Ooh, so what are we going to do? You might then have to look at Devoted to Haslia to get those rerolls. Or is there any others? No, that is it. Where is... Smora. I thought there was another one. There was another one that used to tack on. Is it a banner? What was it? No, sorry, my apologies. It was, those are Dark Blessings. We're looking at treasures. That's what it is. When you look at these ones, your Concentrated Miter, you might now need to be taking that on it because you can only take 1 copy, but you're getting the extra priest depending on your power level. For some of those extra bonuses, you're going to need that. It's not more expensive doing it that way because the 3 tiers, you would have spent a lot, but I'm feeling like that's going to be something I'm going to do a whole lot more often. I'm going to need it. All right. They changed Cares and Sanity. I'm very happy they did. When we went through Cares, we explained this, and it's kind of complicated if you're not aware of this. The attunement is still 3. But the complication was, depending on the level and what level it really was versus what level you're counting as and all these sorts of things, they made this a lot cleaner. So you inflict 2 hits per success on a target enemy regiment, same as always. They rolled a defense with their lowest unmodified resolve instead of defense. That's fine, all the same. Wounds caused by do not count as morale tests. There's no more of that, but when you get to this tier, they do. When you get to this tier, it does this other thing. No, all that's been removed. Each unmodified resolve roll of a 6, so they're rolling these saves. When they roll 6s, you take an additional amount of wounds equal to the tier of the Dark Power pool. There's a few things this does. 1, this makes it much easier to make sense of. It was definitely a bit of a pain before, because at 1 tier, then you get extra wounds on those 6s used to be the thing. And then at tier 3, now you cause morale and all of that, and you had to track all of that. This just means when they, from day 1, when they start rolling those 6s, you're getting extra. Overall, early in the game, it's definitely an upgrade. When you get to tier 3, it's probably an upgrade, although when they got morale as well, depends on the morale and how they roll, could be technically a downgrade. By the time you get to, say, 4 and all, it's probably an upgrade unless you're already in combat with them, and then they're taking the tier 4 negative for rolling 6s on morale if they used to. However, on this, that means they could take an extra 4 wounds if you guys are at tier 4 and they fail to save on a 6. I love the change. I do believe it's better. I do think it's actually a little bit stronger on average dice rolls. It maybe it swings a little more, but I do like it more. And what I say is it's a lot cleaner. It's just easier. There's no going to be a weird argument of when this happens and when that happens and all of that, which used to be a thing for this for sure. All right, let's talk about some regiment changes because there are some. So first regiment that changed is your cultist that went down by 10 points. I love when they change the regiments that aren't out because to me that means they're going to be coming out soon. That's the only thing, and honestly, it's needed. We're going to see Legionnaires went down as well. Cultists are reasonably bad if they didn't get a little cheaper or get some other good things from that they can do, which they did. That cheaperness is much, much better. Loving it. Assassins did not change. Cares, loose formation. Cares already had loose formation. That's not different. They forgot to move the red. Yeah, Cares already had loose formation. They got loose formation last time. Same thing as the Mori got Aura Death 3. They were already Aura Death 3. So that is not a change either. Legionnaires are cheaper. Legionnaires are only 100 points. So Legionnaires went down in points big time. 20 points on a Legionnaires unit is great. They are better in certain ways and much worse in others. So stats-wise, they stayed the same. When we look at them, they have Forced March. This regiment's standard bearer adds +2 instead of the usual +1 to the regiment's secondary march character. Secondary march. And the standard bearer is free, so you just have standard bearers. We are a slow army. We're only move 5. That means in a lot of scenarios, when the Legionnaires come on, they can't even get to your own objectives. In many missions, the objectives are about 12 inches up, or the bubbles are around that, or maybe a little further, but around that, which means your Legionnaires come on, they're not making it. That extra 1 inch actually gives you an option to make it some of these objectives that you used to never make. Or if you're coming in from the side, much better options to get that. And it being free means you'll take it. I find, at least for Legionnaires, I often didn't take the standard because I just ran out of points. 10 points is cheap, but when you got like 3 units of them, 30 points, that's an upgrade on someone else. Since you can take less retinues, now it gets cheaper. I'm really freeing up some points here. The Memory of Old is very different. The Memory of Old used to be that they get phalanx. So that gave them +1 to defense. It meant they couldn't be inspired, couldn't charge, all those sorts of things. So they're only getting to essentially defense 2. They used to be able to get to defense 3. But the memory now, it's much less timed. Often, if you wanted your Legionnaires to survive, you might have to activate them early to get essentially that extra bonus, which you may not want to because they might not really be doing much for you. Your memory now, you can go absolutely last with this if you want. Your command stand in the regiment is +2 stands for the purpose of season objectives. So that was essentially an upgrade you used to be able to take. Now they have it base. And the Dark Cenotaph went down by 5 points. I'm loving the new points cost for these. The cheaperness absolutely helps. So spare 20 points is really going to go far, especially because those characters, some of those characters like the Zarch going up 10. Now I'm covered for that difference. If I want to take them in addition with, say, my Strategos or whoever else, I'm paying less for that tax. And they in general are better in everything but survivability. They are not nearly survivable. One difference in defense is pretty big, but since they're probably more designed to sit on your backfield objectives, getting those extras means if your opponent does push someone forward, they're not going to get through as easily. You can a 3v3, if they're not a killing unit, you will now be able to win those out, which is big. Anatheti went to 160. Anatheti used to be 170, so Anatheti are now 10 points cheaper. And additional stands went down by 5 points. They lost counterattack and they gained parry. So they're getting it more, actually, in that. So what they're doing with them, that means if you roll a 1 when you're attacking them, you have to re-roll those. So rather than when we roll 1s on defense, you take a hit. Now you have to re-roll if you're hitting us. That adds to their survivability. And let's face it, these guys need survivability. They already do plenty of damage. Again, we talked about these not too long ago. as long as you're not buffed out to the nines, they do plenty of damage because they have a lot of attacks. They have flurry doing all those swings. But they didn't survive very well because they're 2 defense with 4 wounds each. You're having to reroll the ones. Once you get that memory rolled off, that's really going to help out. Standard Bearer also went down to 5 points. Standard Bearer on that is almost a necessity, so you're saving a bit. Varangian Guard did lose a wound. They're now sitting at 5 wounds instead. That's still absolutely fine. They probably needed it because they were super, super crazy. So them losing a wound, I'm absolutely fine with it. I don't have any problems with that whatsoever. They are worse, but they could use it. Units wise, I believe that is actually all the changes. Nothing. Oh, sorry, Bucephaly went to 6. Bucephaly I thought were 6. My apologies. Bucephaly went where it used to be at 5. Now Bucephaly are at 6. So they're even better. I love Bucephaly at 5. I love them even more at 6. That's the only change they did, and that's the only change they need. Again, as a player, I always look for things to be reasonably balanced. Cataphracti didn't get hit. I'm a little bit surprised by that. I know people complain about them. I don't think they're as crazy as some people say, but they are very, very good. Dark Sepulchre didn't get changed. I am going to be testing that pretty soon. Whereas, well, we take a look at the last little bit here. Apostate, they changed Apostate again. You gain Flank. That's the same thing. Furthermore, nope, that's the same. So they just didn't change it. So Apostate's all the same. Dark Cenotaph, no longer 1 per army. Used to be 1 per army. At the end of the round's victory phase, add 1 dark power pool to the empowerment pool of your choice if this regiment is within range of an objective you are seizing. So Dark Cenotaph used to be the rule that Legionnaires now have, that your command stand counts for 2. So your Dark Cenotaph now means you can get more dark power. So we are on an on-ramp. Who can take all of a Dark Cenotaph? Let's take a look. It's not going to be anything like that. It's not going to be Bucephaly or kind of forwards, but Krtids. It's going to be things that look vaguely human. Oh, there it says 1 per army. So they put it on that spot. No. Okay, so it depends on the unit. Unless that's a mistake. So Varangian Guard may have 1 of them total, as I read this. The Nathati are not limited that way. So by reading, if you have 2 units of an Nathati, they both could take a Dark Cenotaph. You also have that in your Praetorian Guards. Cheaper on your Legionnaires. Ooh. Okay, we're going to go back to Legionnaires in a second. Those would be the options you can take. Except maybe your Assassins cannot. Okay. I didn't think they could, because it's an undead thing instead, but I just wanted to be sure. So that means for the same cost as old Legionnaires, so to get to 120 points, you have faster move. You now, if you are controlling an objective, which your command stand is +2, so you're more likely to control an objective, especially if it's backfield, and you get more dark power for it. So for the same price as before, you're a little less survivable, but as long as you're not throwing yourself into the mix, you will absolutely do better in every way. I absolutely love that. I guess I'm going to have to build that other 3 stands of Legionnaires that I've been waiting on, because I just haven't bothered building them. I didn't think I needed them. I might need them now. I know in some of my lists, my goal is to get power very, very quickly, because we get good when we have power, and especially for tournaments, we lose the game early, we win the game late. So if you can't get enough turns in, you're not going to win. So it means you need to be able to move fast. If you can get more power quickly, you can absolutely potentially start winning the game on, before turn like 8, which is normally when, if I'm winning, that's when it starts to happen, when I start pulling back. The Legionnaires being a little faster is going to help with that, because I'll be able to get on objectives just that much faster. That 1 inch is really going to make a difference. And like I said, that Dark Cenotaph, I absolutely, if I take my current lists, I could take my current list and just add that in and maybe change a little bit of something. I'd be absolutely fine. And I'll get a lot more power. So my Blasphemous Soma is getting me 1 every single round. My Legionnaires, who I can make come in easier, because I can essentially count them on 1 better, they now will be grabbing me more dark power. That means my reliance on my Hierodeacon build not as much as it used to be, or my Hierodeacon / Archimandrite build not quite as necessary. You can absolutely still run it, and you'll still get more bonuses, but this is a good replacement. And this means that realistically, if I'm playing a multi-objective game, if you have your 2 backfield objectives, if you have these Legionnaires sitting on each, you could be gaining 3 base power every turn regardless of what else is happening on the board, if you do have some ways to up it, you have your Hierodeacon taking out some units using her Dark Shepherd ability, um, doing her prayer that increases a wealth. If you're doing all of that, you could now realistically be getting 5 or more. You could be seeing that you're going to probably, if you can do all that and get the timings right, of course, you could see that you're hitting your higher power tiers one earlier, potentially more. The other nice part this means is if you're bringing the Fallen Divinity, normally you have to really decide which of the two you're going with. This addition does mean that you could stack both up a little bit. You still want her to get to tier 3, but you might be able to go 2, 2, and then push to the 3. Rather than by the end of the game, maybe you're hitting 2. You'll now be able to more consistently get up there actually as well. And because they're staying back, if she's pushing forward, you could be putting this into your Dark Power pool instead of the Fallen Pantheon pool to be able to at least get to that second tier, get some of your old memories of old. I think that does change some of her list. So I'm not going to do this right now because I want to think through this a little bit more. But I absolutely do think I would try a list with her in it where I take some Legionary units, both either to buff her very quick and then maybe go to the Dark Power pool. I'd probably try that first. Actually, I have a game coming up pretty soon, although we're paying at weird points. It's like 2,300 points and all because we're an escalating league. But at that point, that's a different story entirely. But at 2,000, so when I look at what I'm changing from my 2,000 list, and you guys have seen some of my 2,000 lists, maybe I'll put another one up, and maybe I'll build one with the new rules once the app is updated. At least last time I checked, it wasn't. I would probably start very much the same. I'd be taking some Dark Cenotaphs. I'm saving on banners. I'm paying less for my Anatheti, but I'm paying more for my Stratego. So my list doesn't change that much in terms of points. I might have to drop. No, actually, I wouldn't have to drop anything because I used to take tons of upgrades that I'm no longer allowed to because I took a lot of retinues. So I probably have enough points saved then based off of not being able to take the Archimandrites levels. I can easily take a Concentrated Miter for her. Not taking the Ziliarch's different banners that I would take on him saves his 10 points. Anatheti are a little cheaper. I can swap Legionnaires 1 for 1. So I am probably saving a tiny bit of points. I might be able to finagle that into an extra stand of something, depending on what I absolutely want, if I'm willing to drop something elsewhere. Or maybe more realistically, then take a weapon or something like that on my Strategos or Ziliarch, depending on which one I wasn't running combat focused. Usually my Strategos I don't, so I could put a 10-point weapon on him to make him a little bit better. Erithea is always a good one. So overall, for our changes, I think our changes are really great. I love everything I see. I think we got corrected well. We didn't lose ability in general, which I think is really good. Our units that I felt a little meh about definitely feel a good bit better without feeling overwhelming. Now, we're going to have to go through these other factions to see exactly what they did, see how we compare. But overall, I'm really optimistic with what happened for us. You should see some extra list builds next week. I will put all that together so we can take a look at that. I want to try this out, and we're going to see exactly what these rules do. All right, you should see several other videos from me coming up very shortly, all time dependent upon when this actually comes out versus how fast YouTube can upload and all of that. But over the next few days, I'm going to try to do this for as many factions as my voice will hold out. For any that don't, they'll get pushed back a little bit. I also know that I pushed back the starting 100 kingdoms and those sort of things. I pushed it back as soon as they said the rules were going to change because I didn't want to have to record that part separate. But let me know what you think. If you're an Old Dominion player, what are you loving seeing? If you fight against the Old Dominion, what are you worried about now? So, on behalf of everyone here then at the show, has a good hobby, has a great gaming.